Welcome, everybody, to another conversation in the 2023 ADHD Parents Palooza. Today, we're going to talk to Elizabeth Sautter. But first, we're going to remind you that this conversation and all of today's conversations are available to you for 24 hours. So please take advantage of it. Listen again and again. Share it with friends and family and colleagues and the professionals in your midst, far and wide. Make sure anybody you know who would benefit from having access to this information has access. We're happy to have you share it. And what else? Oh, Encore package is available this week only for half price. So take advantage of it. It's only $97. You get all of these recordings, video, audio, and transcripts. So if you know you're going to want to digest this over time, or revisit any of these amazing conversations, we really encourage you to take advantage of the
You can turn it into your own Parent Palooza
podcast, right? So I think that's it. Let's dive into a favorite conversation with one of the leading experts in the world on the social and emotional realm. So welcome, Elizabeth. Diane, will you introduce?
Sure. Elizabeth Sautter is a speech-language pathologist who has been specializing in social communication, emotional regulation, and executive functioning in schools and privately for over 25 years. She's the author of Make Social and Emotional Learning Stick, Practical Activities to Manage Emotions, Navigate Social Situations, and Reduce Anxiety, and a collaborating trainer with the Zones of Regulation team. Elizabeth is so glad to have you with us.
It's so great to be here. I love all the work that you're doing and the community that you serve. So thanks for having me.
Thank you. Well, we've known each other for quite a while now. I remember it's going back many years now. Mm-hmm. And you just came out with a second version of your book, if I recall, not too long ago. So Elizabeth's been doing this work for a while, and you really were my first go-to person for social and emotional learning for kids. So can you explain what it is that we're talking about?
For sure. I think I came across your work when I was first determining that my older son has ADHD. Right. So I appreciate all that you're doing. And so social emotional learning is vast and complex, and it's learned a lot in the schools. We teach a lot there's curriculum, and we implement it in the schools relating to how to identify your emotions in yourselves and emotions in others, how to problem solve situations, how to execute tasks and have responsible decision making, regulate yourself, and navigate these crazy situations that we have going on around us. And these skills are developmental in nature. Just like walking and talking, we are developing emotional regulation and social communication and executive functioning. And it's very complex, even though they're so intertwined. And so what my mission has been is to bridge what we're learning and teaching in the schools into the home environment, because realistically, parents are the number one social emotional coach, but there isn't training for parents to do this. Right. And so that's been my mission, and why I ran a center for many years, a multidisciplinary center. And I loved, the parents in the waiting room. It was like a little mini support group. And then when my kids were having a squiggly path themselves, I realized how important it was to show parents how you could make this an add into what they're not already doing, not an add on to their busy lives. So that's why, as you mentioned, my second edition of my book, it's not a read cover to cover. It's a activity book divided up into home, community, holidays and special events, and bridging home and school to really empower and inspire parents to show what you can do in those moments and not make it feel like so much more that they have to learn. So my friends say they put it by their toilet seat. They just open it up and look at one activity a day. I have a calendar that's sprinkling it in to make it simple and make it stick.
So let me ask you a question. The first thing that comes up is I looked at the cover, and I know your work and I've reviewed your books and all of that, but the question that's coming to me is, it's not just about little kids. Social and emotional learning is something that those of us adults who are personal growth junkies are still doing. Right. So this is not just, elementary age kids. Let's bring everybody into the conversation for a minute.
100%. So, I guess it does look like little kids here, school age kids. And so, that's the majority, but there's so much more that can be done, early intervention, 0 to 5. And I have teenagers, and one that's, and you have adult kids as well, but one that's just back home this summer for their first year in college. And it's just constant. And we're doing this all the time and revisiting and revising, and we're constantly growing. It's a wonderful thing about our brain and metacognition. It never stops. We're constantly developing and growing in the realm of social emotional learning. And the most number one reason why people get fired at his job is not because they can't do the job. It's because they have trouble getting along well with others or regulating in these environments. And so I actually, my caseload right now, I have a very small caseload of clients that have stuck with me since I sold the center, but they're all adults in the job and the workforce. And this is what we do. We talk about social emotional learning, executive functioning, and how to help them navigate these situations, make meaningful relationships, build on their strengths, and do well at their living independently.
Yeah. So it's really a cradle to grave primer issue here. This is not just something for little kids. Go ahead, Doc.
Well, no. And so let's play on the promise of making it simple, right? Because I think that a lot of times this feels like it's a big thing, and parents get really worried about their kids and their social skills. And I had a dad on yesterday in a call, and he's like, I'm watching my kid play with his friends, and I'm really worried and anxious. And how do I help them? And it's like that sort of thing. So this is a big deal for a lot of us. And I know you want to make it really simple for people.
Yeah. So, we do have an online course and community where we have a pathway of, sort of laying the foundation for yourself in terms of you being the foundation of it all with self-care and self-compassion. We can go into that if you'd like, but, and then, priming the environment to set it up for your child, and then, modeling, mirroring, priming, and predictability, and then the strategies. But some of these things are just like being a social detective for your child and what they need in their environment. So just, the sensory input that might be coming in. I didn't even realize how dysregulated my son was over, when he was doing distance learning at home, because I didn't set up like a desk for him in a chair that was comfortable. He'd pulled a chair in from the garage. So even just like thinking about ways that they're regulating their nervous system in the house is the foundation of it all. So just simply thinking about their needs in terms of regulation is a huge piece of it. But then other little things, this is what I mean by make it simple, make it stick. I just did a little mini training on helping your child be a social detective. And it's little things like stop laying out their clothes for them, or telling them what to wear when they say, what should I wear today? This is when you pause for a second and say, look outside. What do you see? Or let's ask Alexa, ask Siri, whatever. What's the weather going to be like? That right there is building awareness, social awareness of what's going on around them, and making decisions based on the future, which is executive functioning. It's also perspective taking for thinking about themselves in the future. Like, what are they going to want later on today? An umbrella or shorts or whatever it might be based on the weather. Or even more simple, that's not too much like future thinking, is when the kid comes into the kitchen and says what's for dinner, instead of saying spaghetti and meatballs, just say, let's look around. What do you see? What do you smell?
What's really interesting that I'm noticing about what you're saying is that you've expanded the term social in a lot of ways. So oftentimes I think when we hear social and emotional, we think like friends, peers, relationships. And really what you're talking about in this context is social and emotional growth or well-being is about that ability to be in social dynamics with our world and with the people in it. Is that fair?
100%. And so there's outcomes of social emotional learning that could be friendship. It could be, acing that job interview. It could be, having a partner in life, whatever. That's what we think about in terms of the recess play and friendships and birthday parties. And those could be outcomes of social emotional learning. But realistically, the foundation of it is building that awareness. I mean, first, it's the emotional regulation, because you can't think about others and be in a functional relationship if you're constantly triggered and dysregulated. But then we're thinking about building that situational and social awareness of what's going on with you and around you, so that we can have those outcomes of being in relationships with others.
Well, and I'm wondering, as we're talking, it's like, where are some of the common places that where it gets sticky for parents?
Morning, noon, and night. Where do you want to start?
All right. So, I mean, yeah, it's the world of expectations is what I'm hearing.
Yeah. I mean, there's just so many things that every kid's different and every household is different, but, there's transitions to get out of bed. There's transitions to get into bed and go to sleep. There's homework stuff in the afternoons. We have a free 20-minute super short mini training on my website, helping your child during hard times, morning, noon, and night. And
we did some webinars on that, Diane, some presentations.
Yeah, transitions.
I have an example that just comes up today. I have a niece who's a camp counselor. She's 17, and she called today to say, I have a kid who's not, following directions. Kid with ADHD who knows they have ADHD because they take medication. What do I do? And what you're pointing to, and I walked her through some strategies and whatever, but I'm realizing that I never really thought about it as social awareness, right? But to ask questions. So this kid to say, did you hear it? Did you process the information that you were asked to do? What do you think you should do with that information? How, what do you think is the first step? Some of those questions that we often ask in a coach approach are the ways that you access that social development or social awareness.
Yeah. And a lot of what I do is I talk to parents too about, instead of jumping in and setting up that play date or whatever it might be, it's like the priming of it before. And, maybe even you're going to the park without the intention, without the expectation of jumping in and playing with other kids. It's sitting on the park bench and just observing, or going to a coffee shop with your child and just observing. And we do a lot of that in terms of, being detectives and whatever, in terms of what's going on internally first, and then what's going on around you. But the foundation of that too, if we want to bridge into a whole nother really important topic here, is mindfulness, which is why I've developed the Connected Family Journal and the coloring book that I've made, because my community was asking, I get it. Can you give us simple activities to do? So I made these. This is Positive Patterns, family coloring book based on the 5 senses: sight, sound, taste, touch, and smell. That's activities to do with your child, one-on-one connected time, talking about the senses. This one's actually avocado. I have so it's the taste section. My friend's daughter loves avocado, so I told her I would make an avocado page so she could talk about the sensations of eating avocados. And then the Connected Family Journal, which is also based on being mindful of sight, sound, taste, touch, and smell. This is the page on what's something that you can hear. How does that make you feel? What's something you're grateful for that you can hear? And so laying that foundation of being able to pause is even before the awareness piece. So let
me pull back, because I think I got distracted in the books. Okay. Yeah. So what I think I hear you saying for the parents who are listening is that there is a detective process involved. And one of the first places in that process is to really pay attention to the senses, how we're feeling and experiencing the world. What we're seeing, smelling, thinking. Is that what I'm hearing?
Well, so those are some activities that you can do to build mindful awareness. So when we're talking about the social awareness, what's going on around us, what's going on internally, that is easier done when you have the ability to pause before reacting. So these mindfulness practices, and I like to do them based on the senses, sight, sound, taste, touch, and smell, because they're super easy for parents to do, just mindful eating or mindful listening to music or mindful walking, whatever it might be. You can practice those for yourself and your child, and that builds the ability to pause before reacting. But then you can, on top of that, then build in the ability to pause and become aware of what's going on around you. I mean, the ability to be mindful and pause also is the, you can identify what's going on internally for yourself, which is then, I feel like I can pause right now. I feel a pit in my stomach. And then you can bring the awareness of, am I hungry? Do I have to go to the bathroom? Am I anxious right now? And then the tools can come. But if you can't do that, pausing to be aware of what the sensations are, then you might think you're hungry when it's really anxiety or whatever it might be.
Well, and the pause piece is such an important piece. I'm going back to your example of the what's for dinner. And so often as parents, what we do is it's like, input, output, what's for dinner, spaghetti. It's like this sort of, we don't take the pause and go, oh, wait, this is an opportunity to help my child to engage in the environment in a different way and develop a skill instead of just telling my kid what's for dinner.
You nailed it. Exactly. So that's what the activities in the book do, in inspiring parents to realize that they can embrace these teachable moments in everyday routines and activities, to pause and ask your child a question or get curious or help them be a social detective so that they can use that when they're out at recess or at the playground or at a job interview or whatever it might be.
So step one in making social and emotional well-being stick is to elevate awareness, right? Whether it's sensory awareness, it's contextual awareness, it's asking questions that engage our kids to start thinking and cultivating their own awareness. And this is true whether your kid is 4, 14, or 24.
100%.
Right? Doesn't matter how old, or maybe there are partners or spouses involved, or maybe it's for ourselves. But it's really about elevating that capacity to read the space, if you will, to read what's going on and slow ourselves down. Now, I know we have a lot of parents in our community who may respond to that by thinking, I can't slow things down. They're not going to do mindfulness. So what's the response to parents who are like, I can't get my kids to?
So first of all, it's not yes, for those that can sit down and do these things, we can actually, talk about it, but these things are not like a do there. You can, just say, this broccoli is, a little bit mushy. Did I overcook it? What do you taste? And just pause for a second. And just that right there is mindful eating. And then you can just, or things like, what's that noise? And then just for a second, just mindful listening. Or you can do tactile activities where it's just, they don't even really realize it. Like they're washing their hands and just say, do you feel the cold water? Right there is mindful listening. Mindful feeling, brushing your teeth, it's like embedded in a simple way that it's not like let's sit down and do an activity and I'm going to play a drum song for 10 minutes and we're going to listen to the beat of the drum. Right. It's more just like, throughout your day, like sort of hone in on the 5 senses and help your child be more aware of what they're hearing, seeing, smelling, things like that they can pause and just be mindful of those situations.
So let's take some pressure off, because I know that there's some people who heard you say that and went, oh my gosh, I got to take every opportunity to have a teachable moment, because we all want like those teachable moments and we want to step into them. You're not talking about making sure we notice everyone. You're talking about finding a way to build it into your just every day. Yeah. And when you have to remember it. If you don't worry about it.
100%. No, I talk about doing it super simple, one at a time. And it's also a mindset shift. It's just realizing, it's not just about, teaching mindfulness. It's about you yourself being mindful and realizing that, one of the activities is in the car, and there's so many things that we can do, like, oh, let's look out the window, or let's just put our screens away and listen to music, or let's look out the window and see what we see outside. It's also priming your child for, we're going to stop. I have to make a pit stop here before we get home. I know we're all hungry, but this is what I need to do. So all of these things are different ways to sprinkle in social emotional learning. But if we really want to take the pressure off, if that's what it's sounding right now, like a lot of activities and things to do and things to remember, let's just do that. And how about we start with ourselves? So realistically, a morning coffee or tea, I'm a tea drinker, but a lot of people are coffee drinkers. Do it yourself. So just pause and feel the warmth of your mug.
Mine's cold. I'm going to
smell the aroma of your coffee or tea, feel it go down. That is a mindfulness activity right there. So you're already drinking coffee and tea, just notice it. And as you're doing that, you can then be a model for your kids and then start to think about how you could sprinkle it into activities with them. But if it's feeling pressure, stop right there and just do it yourself.
As I was drinking the very cold water and feeling it go down my throat and then feeling it dribble down my chin, I was thinking part of what I do is I model for my kids the imperfection of my own little drinking difficulties. And the humor of it is also a part of that capacity for them to access it, right? If we don't take it quite so seriously and we do it playfully, right, lightly.
100%. That's regulation. If you can get the brain engaged through humor. In my house, it's music. I made a lot of Instagram clips with my son and his regulation strategies. And you can see about us turning the music on to help him fold his laundry and then just the humor that happens and how much more engaged and connected we are when that happens. So absolutely. I love the humor piece of it.
Yeah.
So I would and I know we're not quite at time, but we're close, but I would like to talk a little bit about specifically, kids with ADHD and what are some of the pieces of this that make it different or more difficult or whatever it is for kids with ADHD. And
by kids, we mean all ages.
All ages. Yeah.
Yeah. And I also want to say too that, we all know that there's, we're talking about executive functioning here. But every kid is different. Like my two kids are very different. And so I have one kid that's more inattentive and anxious, and the other one who's more impulsive and charismatic. Or I should say, I want to change the word. We want to strength-based, right? So instead of anxious, I would say more like thoughtful and tentative and just observing. So it's just different for all kids. But I would definitely say that when there is, my older son and a lot of kids with combined type ADHD, it's that they don't have the ability to pause before reacting. And so they can often, jump in front of the line or at an office party, my one of my clients was talking about how he interrupts people or continues to say things that he's thinking, but, probably shouldn't have said out loud. And then I have a lot of other clients, and my younger son is more like this too. It's like he doesn't initiate or because he's sort of thinking too much about other things, or also he can get really anxious and overanalyze the situation. So I would say that it's not a one size, like this is ADHD, this is social. And, but there is a correlation for sure in terms of when you're having a hard time with executive functioning, that includes emotional regulation, right? We know that. And so when you're having trouble with emotional regulation and executing tasks, that can sprinkle out into all the things that are involved with social, with being aware, with, being impulsive or thinking too much about the situation and not being able to initiate. It can be procrastination with, I'll send that text later. I'll fill out that application later. Lots of different ways that it can look, but overall it's related to executive functioning in so many ways. They're so intertwined.
Mm-hmm. Well, and the other one that was coming up, the other example that I just want to bring up because it came up with a client today is talking and excessive talking, or, verbal processing, but that, I was telling this client, it was like, she processes verbally to figure out what she's thinking, but she's doing it in front of other people. That's a very kind of ADHD tendency, but that has a social impact, right? It has an impact on relationships and dynamics.
Well, and, fortunately and unfortunately, we have these mirror neurons going off in our brain. And so, our energy is shared with one another when we're spending time together. And so, her verbal processing is definitely affecting the situation. She might have lost her listener or turned off her listener, whatever it might be, or maybe turned on, who knows, maybe they like that. But it's just being aware, and that perspective taking is hard too. It can be really impaired with thinking about how their behavior affects the social situation at hand.
Or to take it a step further, because of what we were just discussing, a lot of times we know we have that tendency, and then there's all of a sudden there's this shame and embarrassment and self-judgment and everything else that makes it even another layer of impeding an engagement in a healthy relationship, right? Because it's this sort of, I'm aware and I'm freaking out because I'm afraid I'm going to do that thing that pisses people off or whatever else. And so I'm tampering myself.
Spiraling or shutting down or
Yep. And that's what I was mentioning about, the anxiety piece of it all. It just can be really overwhelming. And if you've had, repetitive situations where it hasn't gone well, or people are constantly telling you, you're overwhelming or you're impulsive or whatever it might be, then that's the spiral of shame and then potentially mental health challenges. So we have to be really careful about that. I'm glad you brought that up.
Yeah. So Elizabeth, we have to wrap up this conversation, but you have a gift for our guests, for our listeners.
So we were talking about strengths, and this is part of our guidebook. I wanted to pull it out. That's shining a light on strengths, because we want to have a neurodiverse affirming, nurturing neurodiversity when we're supporting our kids, all ages,
or anybody, frankly.
Yes, adults too, but sort of switching it around. So there's a little questionnaire on how to do that. And then a, reframing of like what we sort of say, stubborn can be persistent, inflexible can be determined or goal oriented. So a little flip to just put on your refrigerator.
I love that. So thank you.
The gift is part of our online course, as well as the foundation of it all is the parenting journal, which is creating intentions with the WISE model. It's a whole nother conversation about what WISE stands for: wisdom, intentionality, self-care, and everyday strategies. So this is the self-care piece of it. There's an assessment in here of where you are.
Can I just interrupt you for a second and ask, can you send us a link to this, and we can make sure to put it in the bio and the notes?
For sure.
We can make this available to parents.
Yep.
Go ahead.
I was just going to say it's an assessment, and then there's actually a journal for setting intentions, and then what you're going to do to make it stick.
I love that.
Love that.
I love that.
So what have we missed? Is there something that we want to make sure we cover before we close up, or is there some way to wrap us up, Elizabeth? What do you think?
I think we covered a lot, and I don't want to add more in terms of what they missed. So I want to make it simple to make it stick. So let's talk about just the overarching, what we discussed today, which is social emotional learning and executive functioning are all intertwined. And the foundation of it is that emotional regulation piece. And in order to have, and that ability to have that awareness for social, the situation, your emotions, what's happening with other people. And one of the key ways to do that is through the mindfulness practice for yourself. If it's too much to think about, thinking about sensations and signals with your child, or like we talked about, going for a mindful walk or mindful eating. If that feels too much right now, just do it for yourself. Feel the warmth of your tea or coffee or coldness of your, this is my huge new water bottle. Have you seen these before?
Ooh, nice.
They have it like they sort of give
I've seen those. Yeah. Yes.
So feeling the coldness as it's going down, do it yourself, model it, talk about it, and then experience it and see how it helps to fill up your bucket to do mindfulness, that self-care and compassion for yourself. And then you can think about how you can take the next step to do with your child.
At whatever age, or to invite your child to it as they get older, I think is
absolutely, yeah.
Look at it. I was thinking as you were showing your gift, I was thinking about, we've done some of these as pre-recordings for the Palooza, and it's really interesting, Diane. I was noticing how sometimes people talk about their gift or whatever, and sometimes people show us and they go through, and it really has to do with how tactile, how visual, how for you, Elizabeth, you're very visual. And so, it's really important for you not to just talk about it, but to show what it is, because for you, that's probably part of how you process information. And that's
100%. You nailed it.
Yeah, I
Right.
love that. Now I need to go figure out what I need to do when I'm doing a gift on somebody else's
Right. Well,
conversation, right?
It's the invitation for parents to think about. It's like, I've been doing this for a long time and I never noticed it until this conversation. It's like how often some people hold up a book or some people hold up their this or that. And it has to do with how they experience information and process information.
Yeah. And I think that it's important for us to do both and know our audience, right? If you're doing,
so if our kids are coming to us and saying, look, Mom, I really want you to see this. That's a clue to us.
Yep. 100%
of how they process. Yeah. So that's my insight from this conversation.
Aha.
Thank you.
Awesome. Elizabeth, thank you so much for being with us, for sharing your wisdom and your tools and strategies. We so appreciate you and what you're doing in the world.
Thank you.
For sure.
Thanks for having me.
And to those of you joining us for the Palooza, you have access to this conversation and all the conversations from today for the next 24 hours. And we encourage you to listen again, share widely, far and wide, with anybody you think would benefit. And just remember the Encore package is available this week at half price. So we really do encourage you to take advantage of it. It's less than $100 and it's a ton of information to watch, read, or listen, depending on how you best process your information based on this conversation, and have access to it forever for whenever you're ready to process it or digest it again. Diane, anything else we need to say?
No, thank you for joining us. Thanks again, Elizabeth, and we'll see you in the next conversation.
Take care, everybody.